What's up, guys? It's me, the Alto Gamer here recording another video. This time I'll be talking to you about the look back in the history of one of my all-time favorite video game series of all time. I've been a fan of them since the very beginning, and yes, I'm wearing earphones. I'm actually listening to some audio. And without further ado, without this video, let's get started. And before I start into this video, I want to give a huge shout out to my brand new subscriber named Hightech. I actually met this person through Steam on my Steam account. He's a very cool guy. He is from Miami Beach, Florida. He loves gaming, and if you definitely appreciate, he used to have an old channel called Hide Your Sorrows, but I don't know what happened to it. But he made video games off of music videos. He did one with Dead Space 2 with Alisana, and let me tell you, he is a really good guy. Good friends with him on Facebook. Very good friend of mine, and if you would go to his channel and subscribe to him, it would help him a lot. I've been very supportive in him since the beginning, and him and I have been pretty good friends. We've been talking on Steam once in a while, and so let's get on to the video. So this video I'm going to be talking to you about is a video game series that I personally fell in love with. I grew up with the series. I played all the games. I saw the movies. I read several of the comics, and I would love to own some figurines and merchandises for the series. And that, my fellow subscribers, is Resident Evil. Now, Resident Evil is my #1 favorite video game series of all time. There was 19 Resident Evils in total. I played every single one of them. I own all of them. Resident Evil has sold over 50 million units worldwide as of June 30th of last year. It was developed by Capcom. It was also inspired by another survival horror game, which became so popular, and the fan base was growing, and Resident Evil was born as of 1996. It also has 6 different live action feature films, including 2 animation films, which are also a variety of associated merchandise such as action figures, T-shirts, keychains, wallets, and much more. Now, Resident Evil was actually one of the first introduced survival horror games developed by Capcom. Again, there's 19 total. There's 19 Resident Evil games in total. The first Resident Evil was debuted on the PlayStation 1 back in 1996, then later was ported into the Sega Saturn. It was very critical and a huge commercial success, leading to 2 sequels on Resident Evil 2 back in 1998 and Resident Evil 3 Nemesis in 1999, back on the PlayStation 1 days and Nintendo GameCube. Both the port Resident Evil 2 was released on Nintendo 64, and addition ports were also released on PC. The 4th game in the series, titled Resident Evil Code Veronica X, was developed for Sega Dreamcast and PlayStation 2 in 2001, followed by the ports of 2 and 3. Resident Evil Code Veronica was also re-released on Dreamcast for a Japanese import version from as known as Code Veronica Complete, which also includes slight changes, many of which revolve around a lot of the cutscenes. Also was really ported on PlayStation 2 and Nintendo GameCube under the title Code Veronica X. Earlier announcements also was Resident Evil Dead Aim and Resident Evil Zero, which is a prequel to the original Resident Evil back on the PlayStation 1 days, and also another game called Resident Evil Survivor, which a lot of people were kind of turned down by, mainly because it got mixed reviews and it was a first-person perspective instead of a third person, which I completely understand. But later on, Resident Evil 4 was released, and it claimed to be one of the best Resident Evils that's ever came out. It was critically a huge success. That game came out in 2005 back on PlayStation 2 and GameCube. Originally a GameCube released first, but then PlayStation 2 first came out. They now actually released a high definition version of Resident Evil 4 on the PlayStation Network. It also came out for the Wii. And then later after that was followed up by Resident Evil Umbrella Chronicles and Darkside Chronicles on the Wii, which I heard was really good. It's actually a first-person rail shooter game developed by Capcom. After that was followed by Resident Evil 5 back on the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, was also the first Resident Evil game to be first introduced into the current generation of consoles. And then we also got Resident Evil Revelations, which originally was a Nintendo 3DS exclusive, but as of this year, it came out on the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and the PC. And then recent release was Resident Evil 6 that came out on October 2nd, 2012. A lot of mixed reviews from that game, which is quite understandable. I understand that all too well. You know, they brought back the zombies. They brought back Leon Kennedy, Ada Wong, and Sherry Birkin from Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 4, And then we also got Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City. Now that game is more of a third base first third. I'm sorry, it's more of a third person based shooter developed by Ninja Theory, Slant Six Games. That game has been very controversial. It follows up the events during the events of Resident Evil 2 and 3. If you guys haven't played Resident Evil 2 and 3, then obviously you have no idea what the hell is going on with that game. So, also on the Resident Evil side, it also came out with Resident Evil Outbreak and Outbreak File Number 2, which is set in the Metropolis area located in the Arclight Mountains of North America that was succumbed to the deadly T-virus and was critically destroyed as a nuclear missile attack issued by the United States government. Ninja Gaiden was also first introduced on the Game Boy Color, featuring an RPG-style combat system. There have been multiple downloadable mobile games on the Resident Evil series in Japan. Some of the mobile games have been released in North America and Southern Europe, including through T-Mobile, Sprint, and much more. HD collections have been released for Resident Evil 4, Code Veronica, Resident Evil Umbrella Chronicles, and Darkside Chronicles. There's also been 5 action films that were currently released, including a brand new one that's coming out next year, which will be the last and final Resident Evil movie. Also, 2 CGI movies have been produced based on the video game series rather than the film franchise, starring Leon Kennedy, Claire Redfield, and Ada Wong, and that is Resident Evil Degeneration and Resident Evil Damnation. Now, there's been several novels for Resident Evil as well. The first one was published in 1997, based on the true story of Biohazard, which is Umbrella Conspiracy, which is basically a first novel from the first game, Caliban Cove, original set after the first game, City of the Dead, a novel of Resident Evil 2, Underworld, another original novel during the events of Resident Evil 2, Nemesis, a novel of the third installment of the franchise, Code Veronica, a novelized from the anonymous game, and 0 Hour, a novelization of the prequel game to the very, very first one. Now, in 1997, Marvel Comics was stated that there were going to be an original Resident Evil comic through a promotional giveaway, despite the PlayStation version. But however, as of February 12, 2011, it released its 6th and final book for the comics for Resident Evil. And then, as for merchandise, there has been airsoft guns, figurines, keychains, wallets, T-shirts, posters, wall scrolls, basically every single thing. And as of Tokyo in 2012, they released a theme restaurant based on Resident Evil. And let's get on to the reception. Now, Resident Evil is very well known for survival horror elements, puzzle solving, a lot of action, and critically be claimed to be one of the best survival horror games of all time. Mostly Resident Evil 2 and 4 had been received with multiple Game of the Year honors and placed it as the best video games ever made. And as of 2012, Resident Evil was number 22 of the list of the best video game franchises. Also the same year, claiming to be one of the most successful gaming series of all time. Now, there's multiple characters in Resident Evil, and I'll be more than happy to name them for you guys. You got Leon Scott Kennedy from Resident Evil 2, 4, Operation Raccoon City, and Darkside Chronicles. You got Chris Redfield, you got Ada Wong, Sherry Bergen, Helena Harper, Albert Wesker. You got Pierce Nivens, Helena Harper, Sherry Bergen. You got Annette, you got Alexia, you got Alfred Ashford, Nosferatu. You got Nemesis, Hunk, Nikolai. You got Carlos, Jill Valentine, Rebecca Chambers, Barry Burton, John, Ada's boyfriend. You got Luis, you got Ashley Graham, you got Sheva Olamar, you got the guy from Resident Evil 5, can't remember his name, you got Jack Krauser from Resident Evil 4, you got Brad Vickers from Resident Evil 3, you got Nemesis, you got William Birkin, you got Vector, Four Eyes, Vector, Four Eyes, Beltway, Bertha, Lupo, Party Girl, Willow, a whole shitload of characters of Resident Evil character roster. But Resident Evil is by far one of my all-time favorite gaming series ever since I became a fan since the very original. It is critically acclaimed, very, very successful. It's known for its horror elements, puzzle solving, and tons of action. Unfortunately, with the releases of Resident Evil 5 and 6, it hasn't been survival horror anymore. It's more survival action. That's what they kind of done with Dead Space 3, which is quite understandable since I know Capcom is wanting to experiment the franchise. But honestly, you guys, let me tell you something, and I'll make it short and sweet. Resident Evil is my favorite series of all time. I respect Capcom. I've been playing all the games. I've played them till the end of time. And Resident Evil without a doubt will always be one of the greatest survival horror games that's ever been put out, next to Alone in the Dark and Silent Hill. Now, Resident Evil has been critically acclaimed. We already said that, but there's a total of 19 Resident Evil games, and the recent one was Resident Evil Revelations. That was originally came out on the Nintendo 3DS. It is critically acclaimed, very well received from reviewers such as IGN and OneUp.com and GameSpot and Destructoid. And Resident Evil Revelations follows up the events after Resident Evil 5 and 4. You play as Jill Valentine, who was on a cruise ship, and meeting up, you'll encounter Chris Redfield from the very first one, also from Resident Evil 5 and Resident Evil 6. But overall, Resident Evil, phenomenal series. If you guys enjoyed slaying zombies, enjoying a lot of puzzles, and a lot of action using survival horror elements, knowing what the hell you're going to do, then I would strongly recommend playing any Resident Evil game. Out of the Resident Evils that I really loved the most, I love Director's Cut, I love number 2, I love number 3, I love 4, 5, 6. I love all of them, but the only one that I didn't like the most was Survivor, because Resident Evil Survivor was coming from a first-person perspective and not a third-person, which I know they quite understand. They're trying to follow up the story during the events of the previous Resident Evils, but Resident Evil 2 and 6 would probably have to be my favorite Resident Evil games in the series. A lot of people didn't like Resident Evil 6 because it wasn't survival horror anymore, but they brought back the zombies, and they also thought Leon Kennedy's campaign was the strongest because his felt more survival horror than Ada's, Chris's, and Jake's Jake's campaign, which is quite understandable, you guys. I completely understand with how much you want the series to grow. And then there's some rumors now that Resident Evil 2 might be a possibility remake. I hope there is one. If so, definitely release it for PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 and the PC, because Resident Evil 2 was critically claimed to be one of the greatest Resident Evil games of all time. Once Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 Nemesis and Resident Evil Code Veronica hit in the United States and Central Europe, the fan base for Resident Evil has been nothing but positive, and a lot of fans were extremely pleased and they were extremely satisfied with how memorable Resident Evil is known for their survival horror elements, their puzzle solving, a lot of action, and also the music. You guys, all the music in Resident Evil has been very, very well received by gaming critics all over the world. It's very popular here in North America. It's also popular in Canada, in South America, Australia, Japan, pretty much all over the world. And without doubt, Resident Evil is my all-time favorite series. I respect them. I hope there will be another Resident Evil game coming out in the near future, possibly if they make another one for the current gen and also for next generation. But I heard that there was going to be a leaked trailer for Resident Evil 7, but unfortunately it wasn't shown at E3, which turned out to be a hoax, which is completely fine. I think Capcom should make another Resident Evil game that will be development for the next 2 to 3 years, while the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 and the Wii still have a little bit of life left until the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One comes out this holiday season. There's going to be a tons of great games coming out. You got Killzone Shadowfall, you got Infamous Second Son, you got Titanfall, you got Thief, Assassin's Creed 4, you got Battlefield 4, you got CYE, Shadowrome, you got so many great games. You got Knack coming out, you got Final Fantasy 15. So many great games that are coming out this year. But overall, in the end, Resident Evil, my favorite series. I grew up playing it. I love every single game that's ever been released. I love the characters. The music is fantastic. What I would like to see next in the Resident Evil game Well, if Capcom ever stated to make Resident Evil games survival horror again, I will be extremely happy. I know the fans have been demanding it for years that we want another Resident Evil with survival horror. Bring back the puzzle, bring back the lack of inventory space like they've done for Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. Um, just bring back the whole scare factor like they've done with Dead Space. The first Dead Space. The second one was great, but the second Dead Space didn't feel like it had a big scare factor or a big wow moment. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the history of Resident Evil, how it was originally born, my thoughts and pros and cons for Resident Evil. Honestly, you guys, Resident Evil it belongs in my heart. I'm the biggest fan that you'll ever meet. I pretty much know every single Resident Evil that's been out. There's 19 total. There's 5 live action films. There's 2 animated ones that have been released. There's comics. There's novels. There's merchandises like action figures, and there's t-shirts, wall scrolls, pennants, keychains. There's pretty much everything that you can possibly think of. And Resident Evil, like I said, it's critically acclaimed. Very, 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 very successful series. Definitely number 1 in my top 10 favorite gaming series of all time. Memorable characters like Leon Kennedy, Chris Redfield, Claire Redfield, Albert Wesker, William Birkin, Annette Birkin, Sherry Birkin. You got the Merchant. You got Jack Krauser. You got pretty much every single character you can possibly think of. Overall, Capcom, if you guys ever listen to this, make a Resident Evil 2 remake. If there's enough fan support for Resident Evil 2 and possibly Resident Evil 3, I would love to see a remake. Keep the music the same. Keep the character models in place. Not like the Silent Hill HD collection you've done for PlayStation 3. The audio was terrible. There were some parts where characters are lip syncing through their dialogue, and just bear with me, Capcom. If you can make another Resident Evil and go back to the original roots from Director's Cut, Nemesis, Number 2, and Code Veronica and Zero, and combine all that elements and create into this one gigantic epic story of returning characters, I would love to see Claire Redfield return. I would love to see Jill Valentine, Barry Birkin, Brad Vickers, another one with Leon Kennedy. Just bring back all the original characters from the previous Resident Evils and just turn into this gigantic epic game and make it to be one of the best and most critically acclaimed Resident Evil game of all time. And there you have it, you guys. Is my thoughts, my opinions, the history of Resident Evil. If you guys enjoyed this video, please smack that like button. Like, comment, and subscribe. Rate the video if you like. And as always, I'm the Ultimate Gamer. Thank you guys so much for watching. And as always, again, this shout out goes out to my friend High Tech, very good friend of mine, lives in Miami Beach, Florida. I met him through Steam and also on Facebook. He's a very, very good guy. He loves anime, loves video games. If you guys want to know more about his channel, please subscribe to him. I'm trying to help him spread the word. He's trying to help me out here too. So thank you, bro. Thank you so much for subscribing to my channel. You are definitely awesome. You are a great friend. And I can't thank you enough for everything that you do. You are an awesome guy. Again, I'm the Ultimate Gamer. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be on the lookout for more videos right here on my YouTube channel. And stay gaming, my friends. And thank you, High Tech, for subscribing to my channel. Appreciate it, dude.